U.S. Supreme Court has dealt a setback to U.S. President Donald Trump, blocking his move to deploy National Guard troops in Chicago. In an unsigned order, the justices said the president's power to federalize the Guard likely applies only in rare situations. The ruling leaves in place a lower court decision that stopped hundreds of Guard members from deploying to the city. Illinois officials and Chicago leaders sued to block President Trump's attempt to deploy federalized National Guard troops to Chicago. The Justice Department asked the court to allow the deployment while the legal fight continues, but the request was denied. 3 conservative justices, Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch, dissented from the decision. The court has a 6-3 conservative majority and has often sided with Trump on executive power claims. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker called the ruling an important check on what he called abuse of presidential authority. Trump has argued troops are needed to protect federal property and immigration officers from violent unrest. The administration says protests near an immigration detention facility posed serious security risks. Federal judges have expressed skepticism about claims that Chicago faced rebellion-like conditions. A lower court ruled the Chicago protests did not meet that legal threshold. The Supreme Court said the government failed to show clear authority at this stage of the case. The National Guard usually answers to governors unless formally federalized by the president under specific U.S. code provisions for national threats to allow federal control. Trump has also ordered Guard deployments to cities like Portland, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. Some of those deployments have since been scaled back or reversed.
I hate to barge in on a city and then be treated horribly by corrupt politicians and bad politicians like a guy like Pritzker. He ought to spend more time in the gym, actually. This guy is a disaster. Gavin Newsom's a disaster. When we went, we saved Los Angeles. You wouldn't have been able to have the Olympics in Los Angeles. You're barely able to have it now. They did lose 25,000 houses to a fire that should have never occurred because they didn't let the water come down from the Pacific Northwest, which you guys don't want to write about. I had to break into the water supply to let the water down. And even now, we want more. We can have much more. It's less than half of what should be coming in. I don't know, they have a political thing about it. It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen. But I don't like going to a town, a city, place, a state, and then be criticized by some corrupt or incompetent governor where crime is rampant. Like, take a look at D.C. Crime was rampant. It was at the all-time worst. It got really bad during the Biden 4 years. And then I have a mayor stand up and say how crime has reached a 30-year low. 30-year low. People are being killed left and right, and it's not a 30-year low. Think of it. So for 11 days, there have been no murders. The record goes back years where that's happened. They haven't seen that happen in years. And then people stand up, and instead of thanking us, which they should do, and she's not that bad. She's better than most. But, you know, you have people I watched in Illinois. Chicago, Illinois is a disaster. I have property there. It's a disaster what's going on in Chicago. And you get Pritzker, he's violating our rights. I think this is another men and women's sports thing. I think this is one of those, you know, they call them 80-20 issues. I call them 97-3. I think the Democrats better get smart. And, you know, politically, I hope they don't. But actually, in terms of love for the country, I hope they do, because it would be good to work together. So I'm thinking about, you know, when I have some slob like Pritzker criticizing us before we even go there. I made the statement that next should be Chicago because, as you all know, Chicago is a killing field right now. And they don't acknowledge it. And they say, we don't need him. Freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense, and I'm a smart person.
We received numerous confirmed reports of federal agents from ICE and Customs and Border Patrol abusing their power, intimidating innocent civilians, and waging war on our people. All of this has been aimed at causing chaos and mayhem in the hopes of creating a pretext to deploy military troops against Chicago and Broadview and other suburbs, just as the president is doing right now in Oregon. Moments ago, the Illinois National Guard received word that the Department of Homeland Security has sent a memo to the Department of War seeking the deployment of 100 military troops to Illinois, claiming a need for the protection of ICE personnel and facilities. What I have been warning of is now being realized. One thing is clear, none of what Trump is doing is making Illinois safer. 2 weeks ago, a man was shot and killed by ICE in Franklin Park, Illinois. Shortly after, ICE issued a statement justifying the killing, saying the federal agent was seriously injured. The Chicago Sun-Times has brought to light that the injuries were, in the agent's own words, nothing major. A man is dead. A community is shaken up. And we are yet again left with more questions than answers. On Saturday, federal agents wreaked havoc on the village of Broadview, a small suburb west of Chicago with 8,000 residents. I want to recognize Broadview Mayor Katrina Thompson, who is here today, and thank her for her strong and vocal leadership on behalf of her community. I also want to thank Broadview's police chief, Thomas Mills, for his steady leadership and partnership with state and surrounding local law enforcement. In Broadview, people nonviolently holding signs and chanting against brutality, expressing their First Amendment rights, have been regularly attacked with chemical agents like tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets, and flashbangs. Agents reportedly unholstered their guns and pointed them at protesters. In their own words, ICE intended to unleash, quote, a shit show in the Broadview community. Without provocation and acting like jackbooted thugs, ICE has attacked and detained members of the press, including an independent journalist. A CBS Chicago correspondent had chemical munitions fired at her car where there were no protesters in sight. And we have received many reports of U.S. citizens being detained for simply stepping onto the public street. Meanwhile, ICE's chief offender, Gregory Bovino, has been leading the disruption and causing mayhem while he gleefully poses for photo ops and TikTok videos. Bovino even admitted on the record that they are making arrests based on how you look. Based on how you look. How you look. That's the baseline. They're not targeting violent criminals or gang members. They're arresting tamale vendors and delivery men and shaking down families. Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Tom Homan said they were targeting the worst of the worst criminals. They lied, and they continue to lie. 60% of the individuals that ICE has taken in Illinois this year have no criminal convictions of any kind.